Music is one of the rare art forms that has a split between how it is made and how it is performed. An artist, sculptor, or programmer do not have to perform their pieces of art, while musicians do. Composers and instrumentalists are both considered musicians, but they both approach music in entirely different ways. Recognizing this duality in music, the difference between composers and instrumentalists, and appreciating music for what it is among each group, makes it easier to appreciate music as a whole. Not just pop music or not just music for virtuosos. Understanding dualism opens the doors to appreciating more styles of music and teaches one how to compose better. The philosophy behind dualism is something that can be traced back to 2,500 years ago. To put that in perspective, you would have to play Despacito 262 million times to reach 2,500 years. One of the original ideas behind dualism was developed by Plato, who described dualism in the theory of forms. In this writing, Plato brings up the difference between mental and physical concepts. For example, if you think of a perfect version of a song, concert, or venue, we can really start to strive to make that a reality. Through striving for a perfect version of something, the reality of what we make becomes better. Rather than taking a shot in the dark every time we create something, having a clear understanding of the perfect version of something would be makes it easier to create it. This is called form. So if I have a form of a perfect circle in my mind, I can strive to create a perfect circle in reality. So where does Plato's ideas on dualism fit into music? I like to think of the theory of forms whenever I'm trying to create something new. Most of the time the melody in my head sounds drastically better than the melody that comes out on the page. Awesome. The song's about to sound great.
5 minutes later.
What the fuck is this shit? Ugh. Well, why is that? I think a large part of it has to do with the form in our head of what we're trying to create is actually perfect. And when we bring it forth from our minds, our imperfections of the process get put into the music. So if I don't know the exact reverb, chord, or tone I should use to make a sound, that imperfection is going to come across in the music. Making the transition from mind to reality as smooth as possible is one of the reasons to learn your music theory and how to use your DAW really effectively. Understanding the duality between form, or the blueprint, and what is actually made uncovers the importance of learning the ins and outs of everything you're using to create your music. It is the answer to the question why you should really learn the technical aspects behind music. It doesn't limit your creativity, but it makes the transition from form to reality much smoother. Okay, let's not turn this into another video lecturing about the importance of music theory, because that's been something that's been covered in a lot of different videos. But how does understanding duality help us appreciate more styles of music? While Plato's ideas behind dualism came from form and what is actually made, Descartes' idea behind dualism is that the mind and body are completely separate. Descartes is famous for the phrase, "I think, therefore I am." So let's break down that phrase really quick. The idea behind that phrase is the only thing we can be sure of is our own consciousness. We cannot fully trust what our senses are telling us. Hell, we might just be a brain in a vat somewhere dreaming up this reality. But we know we are conscious. Descartes uses Leibniz's law to prove that the mind and body are not the same thing. Leibniz's law is that if there are two things that are exactly the same at the same point in time and space, they are the same thing. So pretty much NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys or Nickelback and Armpits. But if two things have different properties, they have to be separate things. So because Descartes believes the existence of the body can be doubted while the existence of the mind cannot, they must be separate things. So how does this idea about duality apply to music though? I think there's a duality stemming from music that gets overlooked by both musicians and non-musicians alike. Descartes' idea about the mind and body being separated applies pretty directly to music when looking at composers and instrumentalists. I was a huge progressive rock and metal fan for most of my life. I thought music should be appreciated for the technical aspect first, and as an art form, progressive rock and metal are some of the best at exemplifying that. I like to think of this type of music as the idea behind mastering the body. You've mastered the ability to contort your fingers and play some extremely difficult music, but a lot of progressive rock and metal bands are lacking something. In focusing on only one half of the duality of music, the body, it closes yourself to the other half of music, the mind, which is used for conveying emotions through a song. While the body is something that can be measured through mastering different techniques on an instrument or very difficult songs, the mind is something that has a less clear path forward. 3 chords played with the right emotion and honesty can better convey a feeling than sweeping through different chords and scales at 180 beats per minute. However, if one focuses only on conveying emotions, you immediately close yourself off to being able to communicate more complex thoughts. If I were to write a story and only use words from a 5th grade reading and writing level, the ability to convey complex and dynamic stories would be lost. This is why we've seen such a huge rise in the popularity of complex, drawn-out television shows like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad. While soap operas are normally looked down upon, If we only focus on one aspect of the dualism in music, the art form as a whole suffers. Understanding these two aspects of music makes it much easier to appreciate the art form as a whole. I love the band Animals as leaders and really respect them as musicians for their technical mastery, and I really appreciate how far they've went down that side of the coin. But I don't think their music's very great at conveying a certain emotion, but rather a masterclass on how to play guitar. On the other side of the same coin, I really enjoy bands like Blink-182 and Dua Lipa, but I can only listen to their music so much before I get bored and start to crave something a little bit more than just a simple emotion. Not understanding the importance of both sides of music leads to fans criticizing sides of music that they don't understand because they don't understand what that type of music is actually trying to achieve. So understanding both sides of dualism within music allows us to appreciate and listen to more styles of music. I'm able to listen to easy pop songs if they're able to convey an emotion very well, along with really technical masterpieces that really show off the player's ability. It also gives a clearer path for what musicians should actually be practicing. Getting good at your instrument or DAW of choice is incredibly important, but if you're only practicing scales and not practicing writing songs, you're going to really lack in one area or the other. Understanding dualism in music also gives listeners a criteria for what makes a song really great, besides just saying, oh, I like this. For me, a song has to be interesting musically, using some complex techniques on a DAW or instrument, along with some interesting chord changes I might not have heard before, but it also has to convey an emotion clearly. If a song is only a masterclass on guitar playing or music theory, I think emotion is lost. While if it only conveys an idea really well in a non-interesting way, replayability is lost for me. I've heard hundreds of great love songs and seen a ton of incredible guitar players, but very few have stood out over a long period of time. Songs that stand the test of time are interesting musically as well as being able to clearly convey an emotion. That's why bands like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, along with older artists like Chopin and Bach, are still listened to today. They were able to clearly convey emotions while also doing something interesting musically. So that's why understanding dualism is incredibly important for becoming a better musician. Hey everyone, I hope you liked the video and everything. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Peace.